That's it. Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to councillors and council staff. Particular welcome to those who are joining us via live stream. That'll no doubt include members of the media. Welcome to you as well. And I want to declare today's meeting open and ask the chamber to be on their feet, and Councillor Dixon will do the acknowledgement of traditional custodians. Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to do this. On behalf of Council, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the Sunshine Coast local government area. We recognise that these have always been places of cultural, spiritual, social and economic significance. The traditional custodians' unique values and ancient and enduring cultures deepen and enrich the life of our community. We commit to working in partnership with the traditional custodians of the broader First Nations, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander community to support self-determination through economic and community development. Truth-telling is a significant part of our journey. We're committed to better understanding the collective history of the Sunshine Coast and experiences of First Nations people. Legacy issues resulting from colonisation are still experienced by the traditional custodians and First Nations people. We recognise our shared history and will continue to work in partnership to provide the foundation for a building of a shared future with the Kabi people and Jinnaburra people. We wish to pay respect to their elders, past, present and emerging, and acknowledge the importance of the role of First Nations people for the role it continues to play within our Sunshine Coast community. And this is the most important part, Mr Mayor. Together, we are all stronger, and I truly believe that.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Please stay on your feet, councillors, and I'll read the opening prayer. Again, due to COVID restrictions, the Minister is not able to be with us, but today we have a prayer from the Reverend David Tidy, who is from the Yandina Baptist Church. And I quote, "Dear Lord, we represent the people of the Sunshine Coast. We remember those who are here before us and ask for you to bring healing to their pain and for us to continue to become one people. Our history is not without blemish, but we're strong in who we are becoming. Forgive us for what we have done and help us learn from our past. Help us to grow in industry and respect, to become a passionate people who are prepared to stand up in the face of injustice and fight for what is right. We've overcome obstacles and found a way ahead, standing firm in our history and looking forward with hope and excitement. Help us to value our families, to seek to be kind and caring, to support each other, to strive for empowerment, peace and respect. Give us wisdom to hold in balance industry and lifestyle. Help us to embrace our environment and our businesses together, holding tightly to the aim of maintaining production, residential and recreation in symmetry. We value our sport and recreational pursuits, enjoy nature and all our region has to offer. Help us to remain connected to our earth through our traditional owners, our farms, our creativity, our history and our recreation, valuing this world's beauty and the secrets being revealed. Please give us creativity in our personal and business pursuits as we seek to find new approaches to build on old paths. Open our eyes to find the best in what we have and to improve what is around us. We dedicate ourselves to supporting and empowering our community to reach the highest possible individual, corporate and community achievements. We commit to supporting each other as one region and one community. Guide us and lead us today. In Jesus' name, Amen. Reverend David Tidy, Yandina Baptist Church. Please be seated. Councillors, there are no absentees from today. Councillor Suarez is yet to arrive, but we are expecting her. Can I have someone move the confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting, which was September 17? Councillor Dixon, seconded Councillor Winston. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 5, councillors, I'd like to draw to your attention that on the 12th of October 2020, so just this week, amendments to the Local Government Act 2009 and the Local Government Regulation 2012 came into force. The amendments include the new Chapter 5B, which sets out legislative requirements for dealing with councillors' conflicts of interest in local government matters. And these arrangements will apply to how we manage such matters in this meeting. There is no mayor or minute. I'm going to ask someone to move a procedural motion, which is the suspension of standing orders to allow live streaming. In the interests of the safety and health of the community, the Local Government Regulation 2012 has recently been amended in relation to public attendance at council meetings. This is to enable councils to comply with the national public health directions related to COVID-19. The motion is that council suspend standing orders to allow the meeting to be live streamed to ensure health and safety during COVID-19 health emergency. Someone prepared to move? Councillor Natoli, have a seconder? Councillor Johnston, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. We'll move now to the presentations, the first of which is for Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. In my role on the Submarine Cable Project Control Group, I'm very pleased to present you with the Australian Achievement of the Year Award that councillors received for our cable project. The award is received from the MAV, and I'll just look that up, which is the Municipal Association of Victoria Technology Awards that were announced on Monday this week. The MAV Technology Awards for Excellence recognise outstanding efforts in the use of technology to improve service delivery and efficiency to local government organisations and communities. There are 6 award categories, of which 5 are restricted to Victorian councils, and the Australian Achievement of the Year Award, where there were 7 finalists from around Australia. So if you think about that, most of those just go to Victoria. This is for the Australian National Award. These finalists were selected based on detailed applications, and then they were required to prepare presentations and responses to questions on projects. The judges selected the submarine cable project as a joint winner with Alpine Shire, who were the Victoria finalist. Of significance, the cable project will now be an Australian entry into the 2021 LOLA International Awards for Excellence, competing with local government entries from New Zealand, Canada, Sweden, Netherlands, United States, United Kingdom and Belgium. The winner will be announced in November 2021 at the LOLA conference in Florida, USA. Mr Mayor, this is a great recognition for Council's commitment and foresight to the cable project that is already delivering economic development engagements and benefits for the Sunshine Coast region. Mr Mayor, I believe it puts us in a good position for the world to look onto the Sunshine Coast and be aware that we are reliant upon digital technology, and we do have that here on the Sunshine Coast today. So, Mr Mayor, I think it's a fantastic award, and I just also want to acknowledge the great work of Greg Levy. Obviously, he's here today and his team. As you can imagine, having subsea cable built on the Sunshine Coast is enormous. We've never seen another local council do that in our time, and it's an enormous opportunity for the future. I'd like to present this award to you today, Mr Mayor.
Well, that really is a rarity to be winning an award through the Municipal Association of Victoria. Okay, the next... Okay, Councillor Dixon's moved that. I'm happy to second it. All those in favour of receipt? It's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'll go to Councillor O'Prey.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. Councillors, staff, it's a bit of a pleasure to present this one as well. Just along the same sort of lines, Christian, this region's doing a great job in its infrastructure, and this is about the AFL's Ken Gannon Community Football Facilities Award, which is awarded to the Maroochydore Multi-Sports Complex for winner of Queensland Project of the Year. So the AFL recently created the AFL Ken Gannon's Community Football Facilities Award to annually recognise best practice in community football facility development across Australia. AFL Queensland nominated the Maroochydore facility as Project of the Year for Queensland in support of Council's site master plan and long-term investment at the facility, and this has been endorsed by AFL's National Facilities Panel as the 2019 Queensland winner. We've already seen the benefits of this investment within the recent AFL activity, and of course with the 5 AFL teams coming to town to train here, and also the numerous other sporting clubs and groups and school groups, associations that come and train on our fields. I think very special mention must go to both Heath and Cherie and their staff that are here today, because, Mr Mayor, I swear we've got one of the best, or the best facilities across the board, not just in AFL, but I'm talking about all sports across the Sunshine Coast. So well done and congratulations to you. And as I said to you last night, Mr Mayor, at the Economic Resurgence meeting that we had at Pier 33, the kids of the Sunshine Coast are the beneficiaries of this. Those young kids that are getting around kicking a footy right now are the ones that are going to get the real big gains. And we've got all these massive teams coming to the coast. That never happened in my day. We never ever had football teams, netball teams, swimmings or anything come to the Sunshine Coast. And now they're a dime a dozen. We get them all the time. They're here all the time because of our safety, our reputation as a great destination to train and to get themselves fit for their season. So with that, Mr Mayor, I'd like to present this to, I think it's to the CEO, this one, the Maroochydore Multi-Sports Complex winner, Queensland Project of the Year. If I can ask Heath and Cherie to come down as well too, please.
Yep, you guys do it. Well done. Congratulations. Thank you very much to the staff for the wonderful work. Councillor O'Prey to move, seconded Councillor Hungerford. All those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And the final item is Councillor Cox. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Sunshine Coast has won another award, this time a gold award at the Good Design Awards Australia. So this is our yellow book, or the Sunshine Coast Design Book as we know it. And as I said, those Good Design Awards have been running for more than 60 years to help foster a culture of design thinking, creativity and innovation in Australia and abroad. The Sunshine Coast Design Book has been produced by Council in partnership with our community and the design and development industry. The Yellow Book is a must-have for anyone designing or renovating houses, buildings, streets, parks, public places and neighbourhoods. It is with great delight that I present this award to Sunshine Coast Council and Placemaking Manager Sarah Chalkley, and acknowledge her team, who obviously can't be here today, Chris Hodgson and Erin Johnson, who were instrumental in the work of putting this book together. I would also like to thank Sarah and the acting CEO, who was the group executive at the time, for their leadership and their foresight to produce such an impressive and important resource for Council and the community. This book is certainly raising the awareness of value of good design for our future of the beautiful Sunshine Coast that we reside. And I think it's highly appropriate that they've themed the award colour the same as the book. So I thought I might invite Sarah down, and Mr Mayor, if you would also like to join us for accepting this award.
You jump in the middle, Sarah. Well done. Congratulations. Let's pass on our appreciation.
Fantastic you to put that in your office.
Is that right? Good idea. Okay, I can do that.
Thanks.
Good on you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move that by Councillor Cox. Someone to second, please. Councillor Suarez. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. I'd now, councillors, like to ask you to suspend standing orders and move forward item 8.8, which is the council governance matters and the Sunshine Coast Council standing orders, so that those standing orders apply for today's meeting rather than dealing with them at the end of the meeting, deal with them at the start of the meeting. So I'm going to move that. Can I have a seconder? Councillor Dabrowski. Does anyone want to speak to that motion? All right, put it to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, everybody. So we'll move item 8.8 forward and deal with that first. And Megan, I know there was a lot of time spent on this during the week. Megan will take any questions and answers that anybody has. But I would simply say that in moving it forward, it makes sense that we deal with the new standing orders at this meeting. That coincides obviously with the new arrangements as far as declarations are concerned. And I'd ask for your support on that. Does anyone have any questions for Megan or wish to speak to the motion? All right, we'll put it to the vote then. Sorry?
We need to get a second. Actually, first one was for you. To suspend the standing orders.
My apologies, yes. So I'm happy to be the mover. Councillor Dabrowski, happy to second. Thank you. If there are no further speakers to the motion, all those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you very much, councillors. The new standing orders are in effect for this meeting. So we now go back to item 8.1. And let me get to my feet. And councillors, under section 150 EQ brackets 3, bracket C of the Local Government Act 2009, I give notice that I may have a declarable conflict of interest in matters that are the subject of agenda item 8.1 on the basis that I received an electoral donation from an organisation which is associated with one of the grant applicants. The report on agenda item 8.1 includes a reference to a grant application from Sunshine Coast Community and Sporting Club Limited, an application which is not recommended for approval. The registered address of the Sunshine Coast Community and Sporting Club Limited is with Vantage Homes, which would suggest Vantage Homes provide support in some form for the operation of the club. On the 15th of October 2015, I received an electoral donation of $2,000 from Vantage Homes. Notwithstanding the value of the donation, it was received outside of my relevant term as defined in Schedule 4 of the Local Government Act 2009 and therefore is not a prescribed conflict of interest, but could be a declarable conflict of interest. In line with my established practice, because this declarable conflict of interest relates to the receipt of an electoral donation from an organisation that may provide some support for the Sunshine Coast Community and Sporting Club Limited, I will leave the chamber and not participate in the deliberation and vote on this agenda item. And I'll hand the meeting over to the Deputy Councillor Dabrowski. Thank you.
Councillors, I'd like to thank the Mayor for his declaration and call for any other further declarations. Councillor Winston.
Yes, Deputy Mayor. Under section 150 EL 3A of the Local Government Act 2009, I, Councillor Winston Johnson, notify a prescribed conflict of interest in item 8.1 to be considered at the ordinary meeting on 15th of October 2020 due to the agenda. The report at agenda item 8.1 includes reference to a grant application from Laney Show Society, reference MJCF 201022, which is recommended for approval. I'm President of Laney Show Society Incorporated. The reported agenda item 8.1 also includes reference to a grant application from the Maloney Community Health and Fitness Centre Incorporated, reference MJSR 201033, which is recommended for approval. The Maloney Community Health and Fitness Centre rents premises at the Maloney Showground, and as previously notified, I'm the President of the Maloney Show Society Incorporated, which manages the showground on behalf of the Sunshine Coast Council. So no one can think that I'm wasting my time going to the gym. Further, the report at agenda item 8.1 includes reference to two applications from the Friends of Patamore House, reference HLC C2005 and HLEX 2003, both recommended for funding. The President of the Friends of Padmore House, Ms Gail Denver, provided a gift in the form of in-kind voluntary labour to my being the social media and editing work associated with my 2020 council election campaign. The value of this in-kind work would have been in excess of $2,000, and Ms Denver has been and remains a personal friend of mine for more than 30 years. In accordance with section 150E Code of the Local Government Act, I will exclude myself from the meeting while the matter is being discussed and the vote is taken. I'd also like to note, for everybody's interest, I, like all councillors, had absolutely nothing to do with decision making in relation to all of these grants. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the councillor for his declaration. Councillors, any further declarations? Councillor O'Prey.
Yes, Mr Deputy, through you. Under section 150EQ 3B of the Local Government Act 2009, I, Jason O'Prey, Councillor Jason O'Prey, would like to notify that I have a declarable conflict of interest, a DCOI, in item 8.1 to be considered at today's ordinary meeting. The nature of this is that Ralph Devlin is the event organiser for the Sunshine Coast Chamber Music Festival, the SCCMF. As per item 8.1, the SCCMF is recommended for a successful recipient of the 2020-21 Community Grants Major Grants Program Round 1. Ralph's donation to me in my 2012 election campaign was in excess of $2,000, and I received no election donation in 2016. With that, Mr Deputy, I will exclude myself from the meeting while this matter is being discussed and the vote is taken. Thank you.
I'd like to thank Councillor O'Prey and just acknowledge, councillors, that this is the first of the meetings under the amended Local Government Act and new standing orders, so thank the councillors for your diligence. Any other declarations? There being no other declarations, I'll call for the presentation of item 8.1, which is the Community Grants Program, Major Grants Round 1 and Heritage Delivery Grants Program recommendations. And I believe the presentation is from Heike, my apologies, Heike Herling, and assisted by Maggie Katanak. Over to you.
Good morning, Mr Deputy Mayor and Councillors. My name is Heike Herling and I'm a Community Development Officer in Council's Community Connections and Partnerships team, also known as the Grants team. This report seeks Council's consideration and endorsement of the funding recommendations of the first round of the 2020-21 Community Grants Program, Major Grants, and the 2020-21 Heritage Levy Grants Program. Council's Community Grants Program acknowledges and strengthens the valuable contribution our community groups and their volunteers make towards achieving our shared vision of being Australia's most sustainable region, healthy, smart, creative, and to reach the goal of building a strong community. The program empowers not-for-profit organisations to deliver collaboratively on Council's strategic priorities, building capacity and nurturing partnerships. Program funds are distributed in an equitable and transparent manner with robust processes informed by the Community Grants Policy and the program guidelines. The 2020-21 program budget provides funding for majors, minors, individual development and emergency grants. Recognising that demand for grant funding is steeply increasing, and in light of the disruptions COVID-19 has caused our community, Council continues to offer grants as a strategic investment tool, which is responsive to communities' changing needs. This financial year, the program is bolstered by the temporary addition of COVID-19 community response grants, the increase and expansion of emergency grants, and the temporary suspension of co-funding requirements in major grants, which are supported through the COVID-19 Community Grants and Partnership Response Recovery Project budget. Focus remains on supporting projects which seek to respond to community need and deliver on Council's priorities, activate the community in a resilient and vibrant way, inject money into the local economy, are ready to get started and successfully completed, and deliver maximum community benefit. This major grant round opened on the 13th of July and closed on the 24th of August. Following extensive promotion and support activities, Council received 197 applications, requesting a total of over $3.1 million across the program's 7 categories: community development, community events, community facilities, cultural development, cultural heritage, economic development, and sport, recreation and healthy living. The assessment panels for each category considered the level of community need and benefit, alignment with program aims and category priorities, and the capacity of the applicant to deliver the project. Assessment panels also took into consideration whether high priority or low priority factors, as set out in the program guidelines, applied. This slide provides a summary of applications received and recommended outcomes for each category. Funding totalling $823,200 for 102 projects is recommended for council endorsement. A list of the recommended outcomes is included in Appendix A of the report. This was an exceptionally competitive round, with a 25% increase in applications and more than double the amount of funding requested compared to the same round last year, which in itself was a record-breaking round of requests. In cases where part funding is recommended, the panel considered whether the project could still be successfully completed or if standalone components could be funded. In the community facilities category, the assessment panel favoured shovel-ready infrastructure projects that engaged local contractors, purchased materials from local businesses, maximising the benefit of council's investment. The impact of COVID-19 restrictions on gatherings was a consideration for the community events assessment panel. Some events recommended for funding may be cancelled by the applicant group if they are unable to undertake COVID-safe events. The panel sought to make recommendations which were flexible to changing community need, whilst encouraging the hosting of safe events. Organisations recommended for funding in this round reported the engagement of more than 2,185 volunteers to deliver these projects. The project budgets for the successful applications total more than $3.4 million, based on figures supplied by the applicants. This is more than 4.1 times greater than council's contribution recommended. While this recommendation for funding amount is the largest in recent memory, the substantial need for community organisations' funding support means many groups will be disappointed their projects were not recommended for funding. Following rigorous panel assessment processes, applications were not recommended for funding in this highly competitive round for many reasons, including, for example, the organisation was a lower priority for having received council minor or major grant funding within the previous 12 months. Projects were not considered shovel-ready because necessary approvals or permits or additional funding were not yet secured. The project has demonstrated limited alignment with council's strategic priorities, the aims of the program or the priorities of the application category. All unsuccessful applicants are provided with a reason their application did not receive funding and are able to speak with a council officer for further feedback and support should they require it. Now to address the Heritage Levy grants programs. The Heritage Levy grants are an initiative funded by Council's Cultural Heritage Levy for not-for-profit museums and heritage organisations. The 2020-21 Heritage Levy grants program includes 2 standalone grant streams: collection care grants to support best practice through the care, storage and conservation of the region's heritage collections, and exhibition and public program grants to support best practice related to the region's cultural heritage in areas of exhibitions, public programs and events. The Heritage Levy Grants program was promoted directly to eligible groups through the Cultural Heritage Network, council newsletters, workshops and other direct communications. The Heritage Levy Grants round closed on the 24th of August 2020. Council received 10 applications, requesting a total of $53,441 across the 2 grant streams. Funding totalling $43,846 for 10 projects is recommended for Council's consideration and endorsement from the Heritage Levy budget. A list of recommended outcomes is included at Appendix B of the report. The project budgets for the successful applications total more than $112,362 based on figures supplied by the applicants. This is nearly 2.6 times greater than Council's contribution recommended in this report. Organisations recommended for funding in this program reported the engagement of 56 volunteers to deliver their funded projects. This report seeks Council's support for officers' recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Councillor Law, I believe you have an amended motion.
Thank you, through you, Deputy Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the recommendation from the officer's report, but would also like to add an additional line in there, which is on the screen for us now, which is to delegate authority to the Chief Executive Officer to approve all future grants from the Council's Major Community and Heritage Levy grants programme. So should there be a seconder for that, then I would like to talk to the motion.
Councillor Dixon seconds the motion. Would you like to speak to the motion?
So thank you very much for the report and giving us the feedback on the difference that this programme makes in our community. As you mentioned, not only is it about providing the resources and everything and the infrastructure for our community, but we'll also be benefiting over 88,000 people across the Sunshine Coast who will interact with these organisations. And just one of the ones I might like to pick out from the grants that have been successful, and as a community portfolio councillor, just noticing the organisation Stand By You, who've been awarded a grant to trial on the Sunshine Coast some cutting-edge technology that has already been proven where it's been trialled in Brisbane and the Gold Coast to have an outstanding impact to reduce the incidence of domestic violence. Now, you'll know that domestic violence is something that is one of the major contributions to unrest in our community and one of the biggest responses that the Queensland Police Service have to respond to. So an opportunity like this that uses technology, I think, is a fantastic example of where our grant funding can go to support our community. So in relation to the recommendation, and notwithstanding item D, that is the addition there, obviously I would endorse your support for this major grant round to make sure that we can support those organisations. But what we would like to do in the future is to take this to delegation for the CEO. And what that will do is, at a time like this, this year in particular, we want to get our resources into the community. If we provide delegation to the CEO, these organisations, that, assuming that we're successful today, they would have potentially received the funding and support that they are looking for between 6 to 8 weeks ago. So, because of the mechanisms of getting it to here so that we can give due consideration and vote on it, the process is rigorous enough and is strong enough and has been tested over many years now that we could safely delegate this to our CEO and to the staff so that we continue to make these really great decisions. We have agreed as a group to increase the funding by 1.5 million in this year's budget in a response to the COVID pandemic. And by allowing the grants to come through more readily and more quickly, then the work can begin. So as we look at the moment, we're heading in towards the summer shutdown. It's possible that some of these organisations won't actually be able to get ready and implement their projects or get their infrastructure going due to the summer shutdown. If we'd have done this 8 weeks ago, then that would have been a different outcome. So in putting forward the change, it's important to note that the councillors will maintain responsible for the overall grants programme and policy and the allocation of the budget. That doesn't change. We're ensuring that the CEO can get the results through to the public more rapidly, and communication for those who were unsuccessful as well comes through more rapidly. So on that, I just need to point out that this doesn't impact the 3-year grants programmes of the community partnership projects or for the sports grounds maintenance projects. Those 3-year funding items will still come before council. Okay? So, councillors, I appreciate your support of the recommendations and also of the additional item D, so that we're able to move forward more rapidly and more efficiently for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lord. Councillors, anybody like to speak? Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, and through you, Deputy Mayor. I think we can't underestimate the value of what we've just had here in terms of a change, and I really hope councillors support this. If you think about it, this is cutting red tape. It really is, because The level of trust and respect that this council has for its internal grants team is enormous. And if you just think about it, looking back at most grant rounds, and I'd say, if not all, have not been amended or changed. We've accepted their recommendation, their assessment, and endorsed it. I think the benefit here is that, as Councillor Law has talked about, community groups can have their assessment undertaken rapidly. The staff can get those results out there quickly and get the money on the ground. This is a fantastic change and it should not be overlooked. Talking on local projects, I'm very, very thankful to the grants team for assessing 2 grants, and I just want to talk about them for Division 6. The Chancellor Park Soccer Club, for as long as I've known them, for at least 14 years, have not had a home. They've been playing at the University of the Sunshine Coast and using their land, and I just want to say thank you to the University of the Sunshine Coast for doing that, because they do offer a lot to our community. Recently, with the development of Palmview, the Chancellor Park Soccer Club have secured their first home ground. They actually have their own tenure, their own first home ground that they can call theirs. Today, the grants team are recommending $10,000 to the club to help them with some kitchen fit out, which is absolutely fantastic. If you think about it, the young kids out and about playing sport, they're fundraising, they need a kitchen. The officers have seen that as a priority and they've recommended $10,000. Also, Headland Budrum Croquet Club. So I was there recently handing over a grant for a defibrillator. And they've got an old rundown storage shed, and I think it's been leaking for some time. The officers have recommended $5,000 to help them build a new storage shed. And if we just think about it, our sport and recreation areas across the Sunshine Coast receive a lot of attention. We had 95 submissions for grants, 35 awarded, $418,000. That's more than half of the allocated amount to sport and recreation and activating community spaces. I think that says a lot about the Sunshine Coast. It says a lot about getting kids out there, getting them active and involved in sport. Again, I think this is a fantastic way for the future. The only thing I would respectfully ask of the CEO, though, is if we're going to follow this process, perhaps keep a list of projects that have been endorsed in the councillors' area so that we are aware of them. When they are endorsed, we can celebrate those and actually let our local community groups interact with councillors. That process has worked very, very well. And again, I just want to say thank you to the grants team. It's one part of council that you can just trust to get the job done, and they do it well.
Thank you, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Hungerford.
Through you, Mr Chair. I'm asking Dorothy Dixon here because I'm wanting to make a point. What is the total grants program for this financial year?
Community grants program, so in this community grants.
You're right.
So Maggie, we just need you to go to the microphone so it's available to anybody listening.
Certainly. So if we consider all the different programs, including the multi-year programs, we would have, first of all, just under $5 million, and then we've got the additional 1.5 all up with the additional COVID funding. But for this program, it's around 1.4 million across the majors, minors, individual development and emergency grants, community grants program.
Happy with that, Councillor Hungerford?
Yeah, the point I'm wanting to make is we substantially increased the grants funding in this budget because we're in recognition of the effect on the community with COVID-19, especially our community groups. And the points I'd like to know here, we have 197 applicants for this one here, with a total of 3.1 million is the ask. That's double last year, and yet we're still overwhelmed, even though we increased that amount of money. So I just wanted to make those points, what we're actually facing here. 823,000 in this round alone for the community grants, 102 groups approved. Even though we increased the program by 1.5 million this year, we're still struggling to keep with demand. And I'd just like to make that point of what substantial thing we did for our community and how we're still struggling to meet that demand. And it is disappointing from my end to see State and Commonwealth grants seem to be contracting at a point when the community needs it, and we're more than stepping up to the mark, so I just wanted to make that point for our community. But I do support the addition here, because we do need to get it out to the groups quicker than it does at the moment. We have a very robust grants program in the council, and it's governed very well. And so coming here just rubber stamped and taking a further 6 weeks to get out to the community doesn't make sense. So I commend Councillor Law for putting that one forward, and I wholeheartedly support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. I hope you'll accept that that was both a question and speaking to the motion. Councillor Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to congratulate Councillor Law on putting this up as well today. Commend him for including the additional D. As he's already spoken about, this not only speeds up the process by that 6 to 8 weeks, but it also removes what we've just seen this morning, the element of not having councillors participate in this particular item due to the declarable conflicts of interest. As you know, we've just had 3 declarations from councillors and they've left the room, so they can't participate. So for me, those changes to the legislation put forth with what is being proposed here today is a logical step forward. The only disadvantage that I can see, and won't stop me from supporting it by the way, but the only disadvantage that I see is that we won't necessarily, as a council body, have the formal agenda item come to us, which allows us that time to sort of delve into the applications, have a look at who's been approved, who may not have received approval through the grants team. So from my perspective, having a formal report allows me to put aside time and to review it and get a thorough understanding of where the grants program is actually at. I know with the delegation, it might just remove a little bit of that rigour in that process. So it's not enough to deter me from supporting the motion here today, but I certainly, it was just in the back of my mind, and that's one of the reasons that I was a little bit hesitant, but I'll certainly be supporting it today.
Group Executive Greg, would you like to address the issue of how councillors stay closely connected and aware of the grants, both approved and not approved?
Through Mr. Chair, there's a significant amount of money allocated to the grants program. The processes will still be very robust. The report will be prepared for the CEO, so there's still reports that can be provided to the councillors who will ensure that that happens.
So, councillors, I'd make you aware that you may need to request those at the appropriate time so that you can stay connected, or you're going to provide them. So, councillors, you'll be provided with those reports. Councillors, any other speakers to the motion or questions? Oh, sorry, Councillor Terry.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. I will also be supporting Councillor David Law's amendment to this. I do have concerns, as Councillor Peter Cox just raised, about keeping us in the process, especially when we're closely associated with these groups, and as the requests come through for me as well to be a patron of many of our sporting clubs and community groups out there and being engaged with them. So having that report come to us as it goes to the CEO, I'd appreciate that being kept in the loop, and Officer Greg Laverty answered those questions there. I'd just like to address thank you to the grants team. They do a wonderful job behind the scenes, and they don't obviously get enough acknowledgement from us as councillors from time to time. I'm very happy to announce, obviously, Clown and Men's Shed. They're relocating to Grigor Street at Moffat Beach. They'll be extremely happy about the grants being approved here today. The Australian Volunteer Coast Guard as well, which do a wonderful job on our Pumice-Stone Passage, protecting our boaties. Volunteering Sunshine Coast, Dicky Beach Surf Club, and also Take Action Pumice-Stone Passage, which they are proposing a symposium in February to look at the effects of increased activity on our Pumice-Stone Passage. And I'll be looking forward to participating in that as well. And one other thing with defibrillators, I think you mentioned, Councillor Christian there. I have also given out, or been part of the process of donating 2 defibs to a couple of sporting groups, which is the Clounder Boxing Club and also the Gemstone Club, the Lapidary Club out there on Clounder Road. So, great outcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions, comments, speakers? If I may, I might raise to my feet to speak to in support of the amended motion. Councillors, I'd just like to point out before I indicate that I do support it that imagine the amount of hours that goes into this volume of applications, both for the applicants and for the officers assessing it. So I just wanted to recognise how many in the community have put the effort in, may feel that that effort wasn't rewarded on this occasion, but I'd just like to acknowledge that that's an outstanding number of applications and an outstanding effort from this community, but also required an outstanding assessment process by the officers. And when you look at the report and the number of people that you've had to internally consult, superbly impressive that you were so diligent and thorough. I hope that means that the community is incredibly reassured that the process was fair and equitable and did the best that we could with the funds available. So I'd like to commend the officers and this community for such an effort in this occasion. It's a record number of applications. But I do support the intent of the amended motion. I think that, councillors, we can stay closely aware and connected to these grants. It's an important community expectation. If they meet you in the street, they'll expect you to know why it was either given a grant or not given a grant, and I think it's going to be very important for you to keep connected. So with those comments, I'd like to support your amended motion, Councillor Law. And if there are no further speakers, I'd like to ask you to close.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you, councillors. From the comments and support that you've given, it seems that subject to the final vote, we could be going well. The observation I would just like to make in closing, in response to councillor comments, is I will make sure that we are kept very informed of the process. To all of you in my role as Community Portfolio Councillor, to make sure that you're aware of when do the grants open and close and what is happening from the work. And please be assured that it is a very rigorous process. The process is not changing. It is this step of the process that will change, but the rigour and the examination of each grant application will not change. And it will also be important that you get the results and the feedback of those who not only were successful, but those who were unsuccessful. And maybe with the grants team, you're able to support those organisations to align themselves with the overall direction of the council and what we want for the residents and the people of the Sunshine Coast in whatever way those organisations are supporting them. So thank you very much, and I'm sure that we will make sure that the communication stays very open and very clear for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, I'll put the amended motion to the floor. All those in favour? That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We would now like to call the Mayor back to the Chair.
Okay, councillors, we'll move to item 8.2, which is the Kenilworth Community Transport Service, and I invite Don Pitt for a presentation. Thanks, Don.
Through Mr Mayor. Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors, ELT and other staff members. Today we're dealing with the Kenilworth Community Transport Service. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement to expand the Kenilworth Community Transport Service in response to, firstly, a petition received from the community requesting inclusions of trips to Sunshine Coast Hospital, University Hospital, and secondly, a submission received from the Kenilworth Community Transport Service Subcommittee seeking to expand the existing 6.5 kilometre radius to allow more users to use the service, carry guests of registered users and include trips to Sunshine Coast Hospital. At the ordinary meeting on the 23rd of July 2020, Council resolved to continue the Kenilworth Community Transport Service subject to a 12-monthly review. The service is operated by a subcommittee of the Kenilworth Chamber of Commerce, and the subcommittee holds the operator accreditation with Department of Transport and Main Roads. The purpose of this report is to seek Council's endorsement to expand the Kenilworth Community Transport Service in response to, firstly, a petition received from the community requesting inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast Hospital, and secondly, a submission received from the Kenilworth Community Service Subcommittee seeking to expand the 6.5 kilometre radius to allow more users to access the service, carry guests of registered users, and include trips to the Sunshine Coast Hospital. A petition containing 147 signatures was tabled on the 28th of May 2020 requesting inclusion of trips to Sunshine Coast University Hospital. Currently, residents rely on friends and family for transport to the hospital, as public transport trips require 2 service change and approximately 2 hours of travel time, not including wait times in each direction. The Kenilworth Community Transport Subcommittee supports this community request and has suggested a return fee of $25 to cover service costs to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. It is envisaged that inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital will not incur any additional costs to Council or be of a frequency which will disrupt regular services. Department of Transport and Main Roads have no objection to inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital as long as Section 36 of the Transport Operations Passenger Transport Act 1994 is not breached. The report recommends inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. The subcommittee is required to provide continued feedback to Council on the success to the service and feedback received from the community. Based on feedback the subcommittee has received, they have lodged a submission with Council requesting expansion of the 6.5 kilometre radius, inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital, and approval for guests of registered users to use the service. Officers have considered 3 options for expansion of the service. Option 1, increase the catchment radius from 6.5 to 10 kilometres. Option 2, include additional roads. And the third option is to include additional localities. Option 3 is the most inclusive option and removes complexities around eligibility criteria. It allows the subcommittee to exercise their discretion on bookings and pick-up locations to ensure continued passenger safety and service viability. The Department of Transport and Main Roads has no objection to this increased area as long as Section 36 of the Transport Operations Passenger Transport Act 1994 is not breached. So slide 5 shows the figure on slide 5 contained in the report outlines the localities proposed to be included. The blue line shows the existing 6.5 kilometre radius, and the red line shows the proposed new localities to be included in the service. The proposed catchment expansion would see an increase in eligibility properties from 616 to 1,676. It is considered that the increased catchment will increase the current average of 1.5 passengers per trip, which will make the service more viable and responsive to community needs. Approval of guests of registered users to use the service. It is considered reasonable that a registered user who has visitors staying with them could use the service with their visitors. This would not increase any service costs, but would increase income and improve service viability. Inclusion of trips to the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. The subcommittee advised that there are approximately 12 people who have directly expressed an interest in using the service to access appointments at the Sunshine Coast University Hospital. The subcommittee considered this as a viable option. In summary, the inclusion of the additional 8 localities would see an increase in the number of properties serviced from 616 to 1,676 at no anticipated additional cost to Council. The Department of Transport and Main Roads have no objection to the proposed changes, and the service is subject to annual review to ensure continued viability. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pitt. Someone happy to move? Councillor Law. Thank you. And a seconder, Councillor Winston, thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor?
So, through you, Mr Mayor, would like to suggest a small change to the officer's recommendation for our consideration,
All right.
which is coming on the screen now. That's, through you, Mr Mayor, that's the recommendation I would like to move.
Okay, are you happy with that as a seconder, Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
All right, well that's the motion we'll vote on. Would you like to speak to that, Councillor?
Yes, thank you. And through you, Mr Mayor, the Kenilworth Community Transport Service came in front of the Council in July earlier this year, and it was very heartening to see that that was given unanimous support to continue for another year. And as Mr Pitt has said, the review of this service will continue by Council each 12 months. But I would just like to emphasise some of the key points that we want to give the service more viability and more success and better options for success by meeting what the demands of the community are telling us. They would like to be providing pick-up points through the localities that were shown on the map earlier, giving an opportunity to include another 1,000 dwellings in the hinterland community there, which will be an extremely helpful and beneficial outcome for the service in terms of the number of potential users, but also a huge benefit for the community who are able to access the service. And this is something that has been done and in response to the demands. So at the moment, the vehicle drives past people who would like to be able to hop on and go to Yamundi. No, they are quite often elderly people. It may be someone who is now living alone because their partner or husband or wife has died and they want to go to Yamundi markets or whatever it may be. And I mention that one because it's not just about hospital visits. It's not about seeing the dentist. There is no dentist in Kenilworth, by the way. So if you're in Kenilworth and you want to stay living there and you want to get your teeth fixed up, you'll either have a huge effort to do that or rely on friends, or if we're able to agree with the recommendations today, you'll actually be able to use this service, which I think is a tremendous outcome. So I better talk to the slight changes that we've got in front of us from the original recommendations from the officers. So what we've done is we have removed item B3 we have removed item B2 and replaced it with item B3, which has just moved up the level, which is about including guests of the registered users. Item 1 remains the same, and what we've needed to do is just to make sure that it is the subcommittee and the volunteers who are running the service are the ones who are responsible for making sure that we maintain Section 36 of the Transport Operations Passenger Transport Act and making sure that it's not breached. The wording previously may have given an option that the council were responsible for that, but we need the subcommittee and the volunteers who are running the service to have that responsibility to make sure that no one is in breach of the Act. So that's the purpose for the slight change. It is only a minor change, and given the discussions and the support that we had from this in July, the opportunity to enhance the service and make it better, I hope will receive your positive support today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Any other speakers? Councillor Winston, please stand.
I just want to ask a question, Mr Mayor. Mr Pitt, I might have misunderstood something from the meeting in July when we authorised the continuation of this. Was it for 12 months or indefinitely?
It was to be reviewed every 12 months.
Was it? Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. And I also like to just say that it's really great to see the people in Cambroon and Conadale, that's those areas on the other side of the Mary River, are actually able to access this service. So I congratulate Council and also Councillor Law for initiating this.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillor, as Transport Portfolio, I'd just like to rise to commend Councillor Law for his slight amendment to make sure that the community understands they must not step out of that community service zone and not compete with the public transport network. But look, really what I'm most impressed by is that this subcommittee and the volunteer drivers have taken it upon themselves to increase the service. No, they're volunteers. That is a spirit of community in an excellent example of it. So I really do commend the subcommittee, the volunteer drivers, and this council for supporting this community transport initiative. And look, I hope councillors feel the same way and support the recommendation.
I've a couple of comments and a question to ask. I'm very familiar with this service, and it's an important service for that community. I'm also aware that it actually has been underutilised thus far, and we have had excess capacity. In broadening that out, and we're essentially almost, I guess, tripling the potential capacity, that'll be seen in due course. How do we set a priority, or how does the subcommittee set a priority around who gets a limited number of seats if capacity is at a peak? And I guess I'm referring to the notion of guests, of people perhaps attending hospital. And it's not an exact science, I realise, because people will be phoning in at different times wishing to book a seat. But how do we deal with the priority? And who will have that responsibility? I assume it sits with the subcommittee, and I just wonder whether that has been carefully considered. And I suspect people generally will be understanding, but we could also, or the subcommittee could also have to deal with some claims of favouritism. So just something for them to consider. Otherwise, I'm fully supportive.
Mr Mayor, we're working on that with the subcommittee at the moment. Some of those key things, as we identified before, expanding the broader zone and the prioritisation of who gets first choice, it's something that we're working through with the committee at the moment.
Yep.
Obviously, this has been the first step was to expand the area, which was approved some time ago, and this is a further expansion. So some of these things we're taking on task and working through with the subcommittee.
Yeah. I think it's just worth councillors understanding that there is ultimately a limited capacity, short of investing in another vehicle, and that may prove challenging should it come to the fore. So it's just a matter of management. Okay, would you like to close, Councillor Law?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you very much, Mr Pitt and your team, and some very good comments from councillors and Mr Mayor. I just want to take this opportunity to make sure that we're very clear in regard to Conondale, which Councillor Johnston mentioned, is so that we comply with the Act and so that the subcommittee complies with the Act. The locality of Conondale, it is only about half of the locality. If it was the full locality of Conondale, we would in fact be putting up something that would be in breach of the Act. So I just want to be really, really clear that it's half of the locality of Conondale, so that we don't have any misunderstandings down the track. And also like to comment in support of Mr Pitt's answers and the work that the staff are doing. And I will also remain closely connected with the Kenilworth community. If we approach the challenges and the difficulties around achieving capacity, I think it will prove and demonstrate that the service is achieving its goals. But I will make sure that I undertake the keeping everyone informed of how we are going. And we do have the opportunity to review each year to see where are we at with capacity. And my experience of working with the subcommittee so far is I have confidence that they will deal with those issues extremely well and in the best interests of the whole of the community. So I do urge and I look for your support today. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Law. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to item 8.3 is the Sunshine Coast, and thank you, Mr Pitt, Sunshine Coast Biodiversity Report 2020, and we have Lynn Albert to give us a presentation. Thank you, Lynn.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr Mayor and councillors. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Sunshine Coast Biodiversity Report 2020 for your consideration and noting. Council's Environment and Livability Strategy sets the long-term strategic direction for our natural environment including the preservation of our natural ecosystems and the native plants and animals they support. Building our knowledge through monitoring, research and data collection is one of the transformational actions of the strategy to enable evidence-based decision-making. This transformational action is the driver for the development of the Biodiversity Report 2020 and enables Council to report on its biodiversity targets set within the strategy. The biodiversity target seeks to maintain the 2016 extent of native vegetation by 2041, an extent established in the inaugural 2016 Biodiversity Report for the Sunshine Coast local government area. As with the 2016 report, the 2020 Biodiversity Report has been prepared to provide a snapshot of the region's biodiversity assets across a range of established reporting categories. These categories are reported at both a local government scale and a catchment scale and include the extent, type and conservation status of our native vegetation, the number and distribution of threatened plants and animals known to occur, the extent and makeup of our habitat areas, and the extent of habitat managed, preserved and protected in the conservation estate. The Biodiversity Report 2020 is complemented with a technical background document that provides detailed supporting information of the reporting methods and the consolidated data. The Biodiversity Report provides a valuable community resource promoting awareness of our biodiversity assets in the region and is also used to inform strategic biodiversity conservation planning and reserve management. This table presents a snapshot of the 2020 Biodiversity Report results for our local government area. Approximately 55% of the region is covered by native vegetation, which equates to 124,872 hectares. Councillors, please note there was an administrative error in the graphically designed product and that has now since been amended. More than 46% of this native vegetation is protected or preserved in the conservation estate. The conservation estate includes state-managed national parks and conservation parks, nature refuges, council-managed environment reserves, voluntary and non-voluntary covenants, and also voluntary land for wildlife properties. We now have 117 Commonwealth and state-listed threatened plants and animals. This includes 64 threatened animals and 53 threatened plants. More than 70% of our native vegetation is considered to be core habitat areas, providing important ecologically connected and functioning habitat for our plants and animals. The Biodiversity Report 2020 includes a comparison snapshot to the 2016 report results. For the first time, Council has been able to track its progress towards achieving its no net loss of native vegetation biodiversity target. Between these reporting periods, there has been an overall net gain of over 500 hectares of native vegetation extent for our region. This has resulted from a confirmed loss of 300 hectares of remnant veg and an 889 hectare net increase of non-remnant vegetation, resulting in this overall net gain. This increase can be attributed to natural regrowing and actively replanted vegetation. Across the other reporting categories, there has been an increase in the conservation estate of more than 3,000 hectares, an additional 13 threatened animals now known to occur in our region, a decrease in our total core habitat extents, and increases in connecting habitat extents, indicating some fragmentation of our habitat areas. Overall, though, our region is continuing to support extensive areas of consolidated vegetation, conserving almost half of this vegetation within our conservation estate and supporting a diverse range of plants, animals and vegetation communities. Councillors, thank you for your time today. It is recommended that you note the Sunshine Coast Biodiversity Report 2020 as amended in the appendix for the purpose of promoting our biodiversity assets. It is intended to publish a limited number of these reports and make the document accessible on Council's website. These biodiversity reports will be prepared every 4 to 5 years as data becomes available to continue to track its progress towards achieving its biodiversity target. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Happy to move. Councillor Suarez. Councillor Cox seconded. Would you like to open, Councillor Suarez?
Thank you, through you, Mr Mayor. Our biodiversity is an integral part of the Sunshine Coast's natural environment, and that is why it's so important to protect our native plants and animals and distinct landscapes. In 2015, the Council took a snapshot of our biodiversity assets and then set a target in the Environment and Livability Strategy, which was to maintain the same extent of native vegetation by experiencing no net loss by 2041. What this current report provides is valuable information to understand the changes in our biodiversity assets since that last report. Tracking and reporting of these measures helps us monitor our progress against the targets we have set. Some fast facts from the report is that 55% of our local government area is comprised of native vegetation, and almost half of that is preserved by conservation estate in areas including national parks, nature reserves, council environmental reserves, environmental covenants, and thanks to many in the community, land for wildlife properties. We have 75 different regional ecosystems across vegetation communities, such as coastal foredunes, mangrove and salt marsh, melaleuca and casuarina, heath and wallam, and eucalyptus rainforest ecosystems. 70 of those ecosystems are preserved in the conservation estate. We're also home to 117 Commonwealth and state-listed threatened species, including 53 native plants and 64 native animals, such as the glossy black cockatoo, koala, Richmond birdwing butterfly, and the Wallam rocket frog. This report provides a monitoring and reporting framework to help evaluate the effectiveness of Council and the community's biodiversity program, enhancement and management efforts. I commend the Council staff who have been involved with this important piece of work. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. Would you like to speak, Councillor Cox?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, great report. Thanks very much for the presentation today. This biodiversity report just provides a snapshot of our biodiversity assets, and it clearly reports on the extent of the type of vegetation, habitat areas, threatened plants and animals, and the conservation estate at both local government and catchment scale levels. Protecting and enhancing our natural environment, including our biodiversity, is a key outcome of the Council's Environment and Livability Strategy. And it's vital to delivering a healthy environment and livable Sunshine Coast by 2041. Now, the ELS sets out the biodiversity target, and I'm pleased to say that we're making positive steps towards achieving the goal with an overall net gain of 589 hectares to our region's native vegetation since 2016. However, it's not all beer and skittles, as there are 117 threatened species of native plants and animals, and that's an increase of 104 species since 2016. This report serves as a reminder that there's always more that we can do, which is why Council is working to preserve and protect the Sunshine Coast's biodiversity through actions in the Environment and Livability Strategy. And so when I have read through this report, it really highlights to me the pressures of the Sunshine Coast being a fast-growing region. We've got a lot of population growth, yet we've identified that we treasure and value our natural assets. And how do we balance those off? Well, this report gives us a really good indication as the good, the bad and the ugly. We're taking it all into consideration. However, we have got that goal and that focus. So I just wanted to highlight to our Sunshine Coast community that it is an important measure as to where we're tracking. And clearly we have goals and aspirations, and this report that's in front of us, the 2020 edition of the Biodiversity Report, as opposed to the 2016, just clearly identifies where we're tracking and how we can look to those areas of improvement. So, councillors, as I said, it's not all, beer and skittles. It's something that we all need to take on board and really try and encourage our community to understand the measures and the practices that we're putting in place, because the future of the Sunshine Coast is critical. We all have taken an oath to preserve that and do the right thing by our future communities. So I hope that you endorse this report here in front of us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cox. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and forgive me if I've missed it in the report, but I'd just like to ask a question. Does our street tree or forest program contribute to calculating the native vegetation metric? Second part of it, what's yet to be delivered in that program, how significant is it to the additional vegetation and contributing to our natural ecology?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for your question. The mapping methodology that's utilised has particular, I guess, criteria for what vegetation is picked up. So, yeah, it would depend on actually the height of the specific tree, whether it would be picked up in that particular mapping. So, partially it would be. Some smaller shrubs won't be picked up at all.
Sorry, Councillor Johnston, you were in before me.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. The first one is the habitat tree cover, is that native vegetation only, or is it all vegetation? And the second question is, I noticed that there's a loss of 172 hectares of core habitat area. Would you like to explain what that means, please?
Through you, Mr Mayor. So the state government mapping does describe its remnant vegetation mapping as native vegetation, but it absolutely can't guarantee that there is not an individual invasive species within a stand of remnant veg. The loss of the core habitat area is picked up in terms of not only improvements in our mapping methodology, but also extents that have been impacted from either state clearing or other urban and residential development, or reclassification of particular vegetation within that state mapping layer.
Thank you.
Look, I think it's a wonderful report. There's always room for improvement, and that inevitably will always be the case as higher expectations arise or as we see initiatives that we can enhance our biodiversity. But I must say I take great pride in our council, and particularly in the staff of our council who work so hard. Thank you, Lynn, and your colleagues, Dr. Dave, for the great work that is being done. And when you think that, you know, we've got over 57,000 hectares of conservation estate, it's significant. And without repeating what Lynn said, I want to just recognise a couple of elements of that. And the first of those is the land that's been purchased by council through the Environment Levy, which is a levy funded by our ratepayers. And those sitting around this table over certainly the last 2 terms and this new term, you know, we've worked really hard and added considerably to that. And we can be very proud of that. I know the councillors that have joined us subsequently will also carry that legacy forward, because that is really, really important. And we've done that in ways that have helped link national parks so that fauna and flora can be better protected and have better access to areas of protection. The other critical element that I'm really proud of is the Land for Wildlife program. I think now somewhere up around 1,200 properties, you know, which has shown massive growth as a consequence, again, of council officers and indeed of council highlighting the priority, highlighting how important land for wildlife is and the contribution that individuals can make. And remember, we are the largest land for wildlife program in the country. And that's, again, something that our community should be really proud of and take great heart from. Only 15% of this total area of the Sunshine Coast is set aside for urban development. And, you know, I think that's been very, very responsibly done. But in the future, as we update this report and others, we'll talk about things like our success with the interurban break, our nomination for the biosphere, the transformation of the North Maroochydore River around the Blue Heart, and of course our coastal hazards adaptation strategy. All these things contribute to what it is we're doing. So our constituents should not think that we've done all that's possibly, all that we can do, because the reality is we've got a much, much bigger agenda in delivering for the biodiversity of the Sunshine Coast. And I often wonder in my moments when I have a bit of spare time, I think about what is out there in our biodiversity that is potentially a cure for some major challenge of the future. And that's probably been more on my mind than not lately because of COVID-19. And who knows? And I've got to say that I've had some interest from some parties who recognise the Sunshine Coast as an area where the potential for our biodiversity has perhaps some major upsides well beyond the satisfaction of our residents knowing that it's been well looked after. So again, thank you to the staff, and I'd urge councillors all to support this report today. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is an amazing tool to have, be able to track our biodiversity within our community, and I thank the tremendous work that the council officers have done and been able to provide not only us but also our community the information that is so critical to be able to understand what the impacts of both human impacts as well as natural impacts. As we know, climate change is having an immense impact on our biodiversity. In particular, we see the endangered species. A lot of these may not necessarily be impacts directly attributed to us. It may be impacts that are happening around the globe. Migratory birds in particular are one that might represent a large number of these endangered species. What I'd like to know, when we have a look at the remnant vegetation versus non-remnant vegetation, where we've had a net loss of 300 hectares of remnant vegetation versus 889 hectares of non-remnant vegetation increase. But I'd like to understand in future, if we can, a weighting that we attribute to the remnant vegetation. How important was that remnant vegetation to the network? How important to the ecosystem? Did it have any diverse impacts on endangered species, our wildlife and so forth? Just again to better understand what those impacts might be. Because if it is an impact that we are attributing to decisions that we make in council, then I think it's important that we can understand what those impacts are. So, you know, with the tremendous work and being able to just, you know, focus on some of those outcomes, it will give us more clarity about what is actually happening. It's great to see that the increase, but, you know, the 300 hectares of remnant vegetation may outweigh just purely because of weighting and the importance of that remnant vegetation. I'd like to, as much as I could, try and get out of this document, try and better understand exactly what is the definition of remnant vegetation, how long it's been there, how important it is, and so forth. And I know it is recognised under, you know, Commonwealth interpretation, but I think more importantly for us, gives us a better sense of understanding, has it been there for 100 years versus something that was planted 5 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Natoli. No further speakers, so I'll go to Councillor Suarez to close, please.
Mr. Mayor, as was mentioned, this report is a valuable source of information for us. It helps us understand and helps us make informed investment decisions. As the Mayor has stated, we've purchased some significant portions of land to assist. And it highlights where we're doing well and where we would like to improve, as was mentioned by some of the other councillors. Some of those areas, obviously, fragmentation of the core habitat and remnant vegetation. In addition to the report, we've been distributed some maps. Councillors have been distributed some maps, and I'd urge you to have a look at those maps. They include Commonwealth-listed threatened ecological communities per division, or for the whole region, and then you've got your divisional boundaries, and also State Vegetation Management Act conservation status. So it'll show you where the vegetation is, where it's endangered, of concerned and least concerned. And I'd urge you to get familiar with those maps because it will help us inform our decisions going forward when we have infrastructure projects and development applications coming through. And that may assist us as a council in those areas of improvement. The report has some fascinating insights, and I urge the community to have a look at it as well when it comes online. The officer's report proposes that this work continues with reports prepared every 4 to 5 years as information comes to hand, and to receive and note this report for the purpose of promoting our biodiversity assets, and I hope that we all support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Suarez. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Well done. Item 8.4, I'm just going to throw to the CEO for an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So in relation to item 8.4, Sunny Cove, the applicant has provided notice in accordance with section 52 of the Planning Act 2016 of a change to the application. As a result, the officer report currently due to be reported to the meeting today has been withdrawn from the agenda, and the change application will be reassessed and presented to a future council meeting. Thanks.
Thank you. So item 8.4 is removed. Perhaps that is an opportune time just to take a break for morning tea. Could we be back at 11:45, please? 10:45. Sorry, 10:45. My apologies. Yeah, I thought that was a bit long.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, Councillors and the CEO. This report presents to Council a proposed amendment to the planning scheme policy for development works and seeks Council's endorsement to prepare and progress the proposed amendment for public consultation. The planning scheme policy for development works supports the implementation of the Sunshine Coast Planning Scheme by providing advice about achieving outcomes in the relevant codes and providing guidance for the design and construction of works undertaken as part of new development. The planning scheme policy has been in operation since the commencement of the planning scheme in 2014. It is a technical document that sets out Council's requirements across various infrastructure asset networks such as roads, stormwater, landscaping and recreation, and also defines standards and procedures for contributed assets. The planning scheme policy is mainly used by developers and engineering consultants when designing and constructing development works, and by Council's Development Services branch when assessing and deciding development applications. The proposed amendment to the planning scheme policy for development works has been prepared in response to the outcomes of an audit committee report on contributed assets, which was presented to Council in September 2017. This report identified the opportunity to make refinements to the planning scheme policy to ensure that the standards and specifications are relevant and consistent with up-to-date engineering practices and to improve the quality of contributed assets. Since that time, there has been a collaborative review by Council's asset custodians to identify the relevant standards and specifications that require updating and revision. In summary, the proposed amendment refines and updates standards and specifications for development asset infrastructure and works, particularly in relation to stormwater management, electrical, lighting and telecommunications, street and road pavements, open space, landscape infrastructure and local parks. It also updates references and guidelines in the planning scheme policy. It deletes redundant water and sewer specifications, which are now administered by Unity Water. It includes a new section on the delivery of local parks and corrects spelling and grammatical errors. The standards contained in the planning scheme policy are a minimum acceptable to satisfy the requirements of the planning scheme. Developers, engineers may propose alternative solutions for council approval to meet the objectives of these standards. The process for undertaking amendment to a planning scheme policy is set out under the Planning Act and the Minister's Guidelines and Rules. The process does not require Council to undertake state interest review. However, Council is required to place the proposed amendment on public consultation for a minimum of 20 business days. Following consultation, a report will be presented back to Council on the outcomes of the public consultation and any issues raised in submissions received during that time. This report will also seek to Council's determination on whether to proceed to adopt the proposed amendment with or without changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Roma. Thank you. Second. Councillor Dixon. You want to vote?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Basically, the planning scheme policy for development works is a technical document that sets out Council's requirements across various infrastructure asset networks. It includes roads, stormwater, landscape and recreation, and defines the standards and procedures for contributed assets with regard to construction, compliance and acceptance. So what we're looking at here is upgrading our current requirements in the planning scheme, as you do over time. So in summary, the proposed amendment to the planning scheme policy for development works seeks to update the standards, specifications and procedures to guide the design, construction and delivery of new development asset infrastructure and works, including roads, stormwater, landscaping and recreation infrastructure. And putting this out for consultation to get the feedback is an important step in doing this. But you need to do this over time as standards change. And I think the next report on the flooding and stormwater is a follow-on from this as well. So it's about us refining our town plan, the requirements and improving the standards over time. And I'll put this to you, this is a very positive thing. It was identified in the Audit Committee in 2017 as an area to look at, and that's what we've done, a very thorough revision of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Perhaps I can just ask a question, Rana. Why has it taken us 3 years to get to where we are with the policy and still have public consultation to go?
Well, basically, we've been working with various council branches to identify what those standards require updating and revision, and obviously that has taken time to go through that process and just to finalise and work between the various branches, because there are some overlaps also between some of these standards. So it's just making sure that we're all sort of in agreement with the standards that we're presenting and updating.
Perhaps, and it won't happen for a while, but I think there's always examples of where we can look back and think, well, could we have done it in a slightly different way that would have improved the process and perhaps brought it to pass faster. I'm not suggesting we need to worry about that now, but perhaps some sort of review of that would be helpful. Okay, no further speakers. Councillor Babarowski and then Councillor Natali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thank you for the report. Look, I'd just like the community to be reassured that these amendments don't reduce our opportunity to have complex, high personality, diverse range of local parks. So would it be possible just for you to reassure us, a small explanation of what the new section on the delivery of local parks means, but more importantly, that it doesn't mean that we'll end up with ubiquitous, sameness?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. The local parks section, basically the standards that are specified in there is what council ultimately would like to achieve. However, there are supporting documents that relate to this planning scheme policy, and that includes the Open Space Landscape Infrastructure Manual, and council is also working to prepare a draft local parks or recreational parks master plan, which will sort of provide further detailed guidance in relation to what council requires in terms of the specifications for design and construction of local parks. As I indicated, these standards that are specified are the sort of minimum, but however, a developer or engineer can come to council and seek a sort of an alternative solution, and obviously that would have to be subject to council approval. But basically, in terms of like the embellishments, particularly some of those embellishments may be temporary until other sort of features are incorporated to what they've sort of developed, such as shade structures, which are temporary until the shade trees are established and can provide that shade that's necessary for local parks.
Thank you.
Councillor Natali.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just a question, overall, if this was adopted and supported, the improvement in infrastructure and delivery of assets to council, have we done some sort of estimate in terms of what the in terms of life of assets, benefits that we would get from these amendments, or in terms of financial benefit downstream? Has that been looked at and analysed?
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm not quite sure about the details around the assets. That would probably maybe direct that question to the relevant group executive in relation to those contributed assets. I'm not sure whether my colleague George could be able to answer that question.
Tom, can you add anything, please?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and through you. In terms of your question, Councillor, no, the calculation and the analysis of exactly that data hasn't been undertaken. But in terms of as the assets are starting to get identified, then through the asset management systems we can start to calculate and start to look at those ongoing costs or ongoing any further investment that's required. But at this stage, no, that analysis has not been done.
Okay. Councillor Johnston.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
One of the areas that I get so much comment about is the width of streets in some of our urban subdivisions. I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that this doesn't rule the width of streets. It's more about the depth of the pavement and various things like that, the verge treatments, all that sort of stuff. And the matter about width of streets is to be dealt with in another area of town planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suarez.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. Rhoda, the document is quite a technical document and it will be going out for community consultation. Because it's quite a technical document, who in the community are you really going to be looking for feedback from?
Through you, Mr Mayor, as far as I understand, there will be some key stakeholders that we will be providing briefings to, and one of those will be the UDIA as well as SCEC and other sort of major stakeholders. But primarily it's the developers and engineers that will be sort of concerned about the provisions that are contained within this document.
One of the things that a lot of the community do raise are constructed water bodies and weirs that go out to the ocean, etc. And while I understand it's quite a technical document and going to the industry groups is a logical point, will we be inviting any comment from general members in the community who may have some concerns about this infrastructure that would be affected in this policy?
Through you, Mr Mayor, the document will be on our website, so it's open to basically anyone to be able to make a submission in relation to the document.
Thank you.
No further speakers. Can I go back to Councillor Hungerford? No need to close. We'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. I should have noted, and I'm sure it has been noted, that Councillor O'Prey needed to leave and isn't participating in the balance of the meeting. Thanks, Rama, very much. Item 8.6 is flooding and stormwater management guidelines, and we have Crispin Smythe give us a presentation. Thank you, Crispin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, the purpose of this report is to seek endorsement of the flooding and stormwater management guidelines so that it may be referenced in the planning scheme policy for development works. The flooding and stormwater management guidelines are a technical document and are aimed at engineers who support the development industry. The need for the flooding and stormwater management guidelines is identified in the environment and livability strategy. The guidelines would support the planning scheme as a reference document in planning scheme policy. The flooding and stormwater management guidelines provide technical interpretation of how to apply broader industry guidance specifically on the Sunshine Coast. They are intended to assist the development industry demonstrate compliance with the performance outcomes of the Stormwater Management Code. This is expected to improve the standard of contributed stormwater assets from new development. The flooding and stormwater management guidelines provide clarity on the existing policy positions of the planning scheme and environment and livability strategy. Industry consultation on the flooding and stormwater management guidelines occurred in August of 2019 and 24 submissions were received. If endorsed, the flooding and stormwater management guidelines will be available for public display as part of the normal planning scheme amendment process associated with amending the planning scheme policy for development works. In conclusion, this report recommends that the flooding and stormwater management guidelines are endorsed to support the implementation of the planning scheme who are referenced in the planning scheme policy for development works. It also recommends that delegated authority is provided to the Chief Executive Officer so that the flooding and stormwater management guidelines can be updated from time to time to maintain currency. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Crispin. Someone to move? Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Natali, seconder. Thank you. Would you like to open, Councillor Hungerford?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Again, this is us reviewing our policies and programs within the council, which is a continuing process for improvement all the time. So basically, it is intended that the guidelines be referenced in the planning scheme policy development works, so that they support the demonstrated compliance with the performance outcomes of the Stormwater Management Code. This is strengthening our codes. This is expected to improve the standard of contributed stormwater assets from new development, which is important as we go forward. The guidelines are new for the Sunshine Coast Council. There have been instances of consultants continuing to reference guidelines from the former Maroochydore Council. So the guidelines aim to support the codes and policies of the planning scheme by providing additional detail around how stormwater quality, quantity, drainage and flooding issues are to be managed. The guidelines will cover streetscape bioretention with new design approach and standard drawings, lawful point of discharge and how the Queensland Urban Drainage Manual 2017 is to be applied on the Sunshine Coast. Support for the National Stormwater Quality Improvement Device Evaluation Protocol. Deemed to comply sizing for on-site water detention. Acceptable and tolerable flood risk and acceptable and tolerable flood impacts. And that's an important one, especially with new development. Procedure for floodplain storage, which is an important calculation, especially in regards to climate change to be considered in stormwater design. And that's an ongoing, and that's where you're delegating to the CEO to make those amendments as we go on, as that information becomes available. And templates for stormwater management plans, flood hazard assessments, maintenance plans and flood emergency management plans. They're all important in future development. So this is very positive from going forward, and we're actually looking to the future with this. Going out to public consultation is a good step to see if there's anything we've missed or refined there, and then come back to amend our town plan, because we are going into, as a council, having to look for doing a new town plan in the future. And so this sort of work will be very important in complementing that work. So I put this to you, councillors, to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. Councillor Babarowski.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just wanted to stand to support this, the officer recommendations largely because I think we all recognise we live in subtropical Queensland. You know, we have some serious rain events, we have deluge events. So managing our stormwater is a very important part of how we continue to reduce our impacts on the environment and live the lifestyles we do. One aspect of this struck me, and I did appreciate some extra time with the staff on it, which is our bioretention basins. I have a number of suburbs where different approaches have been taken. So we are still learning, and I say we in the broadest sense, not just council, but the developer and the community as well. But what that taught me is it's very important to recognise that bioretention basins are a very high profile asset, and the community can get either increased goodwill towards it or diminished goodwill, depending on how well designed they are and how well they function and how well maintained they are. And I must admit, I think I'm really pleased with the level of design and thought and conscientiousness that's gone into these proposed guidelines. And I hope the community consultation does get some feedback for you on the bioretention basins, because it's a very important aspect of stormwater management, and some places it's been done pretty badly, or certainly at least on the land occupation level, not necessarily the filtration level. So well done. I'm very pleased that I think the detail is there for those who want to interrogate it, and I hope that the community consultation gets you some good feedback on that and maybe a tweak or two. So thank you, councillors. I certainly support the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Babarowski. Councillor Natoli.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and great work, Crispin, on this report. Obviously very detailed, but significant because Division 4, where I represent, is impacted by being on the coast. There are a number of low-lying areas, as there are in a number of other parts of the local government area, but more importantly, I think the challenges for us in the future are going to be when we deal with infill development, and it's going to obviously be extremely costly process to change the infrastructure to be able to cope with that, because of the fact there's so little ground surface to be able to absorb, and with that built environment being so built out. I just want to know what sort of planning have we done in those coastal areas, and are you able to elaborate the work that we've done so far to be able to prepare for that transition when it does happen?
In response through you, Mr Mayor. So the flooding and stormwater management guidelines provide the development industry with some deemed to comply information on on-site detention sizing, and that will assist in moderating flows off of development sites so as not to put excessive strain on the stormwater network. In addition, we have been undertaking a program of master drainage studies. Those studies are intended to both inform future capital works planning for council, but they also give us a better understanding of how the stormwater network performs holistically. So not just looking at a site and the water that runs off a site, but when we factor in the zoning for those areas and understanding how the water runs off of existing development, but also future development, how all that water comes together in the stormwater network. And so that is important for assisting development services as they guide development or developers through the development assessment process.
Just follow up, Mr Mayor. Through you to the CEO, I would just welcome if the opportunity, and I'm not sure if any other councillors are interested, but just to be able to get a personal overview of the work that's been done. I would welcome if the CEO could arrange that information to be brought to any councillor that might be interested.
Yep. Okay. No further speakers. Would you like to close, Councillor Hungerford? We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, Crispin. Item 8.7 is the September 2020 Financial Performance Report, and I invite Isaac Pickerskill to give us a presentation. Thank you, Isaac.
Good morning, Mr Mayor, councillors and council executive staff. Here today present the Financial Performance Report for September 2020. As a council, at the end of September, the operating result of $80.4 million is favourable to budget by $2.3 million. The favourable variance consists of revenue above budget of $814,000, as well as expenses below budget of $1.5 million. Council's revenue for September is tracking ahead of budget, with additional funds being received from Sunshine Coast Stadium, licence permits and certificate revenues produced from the solar farm. The additional revenues is being offset by reduced revenue on parking infringements. Our council's total employee expenses are slightly above below budget. Employee expenses are slightly above budget, which is offset by reduced expenditure in materials and services. The Capital Works program has progressed to 27% of budget, with a total expenditure of $73 million. A significant progress has been made on projects within the transportation, buildings, coast and canals programs. with highlights including Brisbane Road Car Park, Minimal Boulevard, and the Maroochydore Groin Replacement Project. And the Sunshine Coast Airport Expansion Project has progressed 46% of budget and is still scheduled to be finalised later this calendar year. Council's cash at the end of September is 244 million, with 85 million currently invested in short-term deposits at an average interest rate of 0.81%. And Council's debt at the end of 30 September is 527 million. Councillors, today the recommendation is for Council to receive a note report titled September 2020 Financial Performance Report.
Thank you. Looking to you, Councillor Hungerford again. Thank you. Seconder, Councillor Tolley. Would you like to open, Councillor?
Through you, Mr Mayor. I'll just briefly go over, report a lot of the main highlights. We have a positive operating result of 80.4 million. That's 2.3 million above the current budget year to date. Our operating expenditure as of the 3rd of September, 108.5 million, which is 1.5 million or 1.4% less than the current budget amount of 110 million. Fees and charges, our parking and fringe are below target by 859,000. I'm sure the community will be happy with that one. We haven't been chasing parking infringements during the COVID period, but that will change in the future. This has been offset by licensing and permits, which is above budget 292,000, and ticket sales above budget by 182,000 due to the Sunshine Coast Stadium hosting the Melbourne Storm home games, and we hope as we come out of COVID that we get a pick up in these areas because it does help our bottom line. The operating grants and subsidies. Now, the receipt of the state government grants for the Coastal Hazard Adaptation Strategy of 270,000 and the blue carbon trial of 210,000. These are the main contributors to the positive variance we have at the moment. Other revenue, the positive variance of other revenue due to the recoupment of legal fees of 108,000. Now our certificate revenue from the solar farm, 161,000. And I still get people out there saying that the solar farm's a dud and loses council money. It doesn't. And you've got to remember this is from July to now, 30th of September, and the contestable market for electricity is a supply and demand market. We've achieved that in the time of the year when demand is low. We're coming into the summer months, so it will fluctuate as we go along, but on average it's doing very well, the solar farm. So those that say it's a dead asset do not know what they're talking about. And sales for the Sunshine Coast Stadium at 64,000, so that's helped our bottom lines. As of September, 73 million of Council's 272 million capital works program is financially expended. That's healthy for our community and keeping works and jobs going out there. The core capital program has progressed 20.6% of budget, an actual spend of 40.5 million. And that's in our community. At the moment, we continue to do that month on month. Corporate major projects progress 50.2%, and the Sunshine Coast Airport runway project progressed 46.2% of the respective budgets. And the other area that is always down is because of the interest rates is our investments on the 244 million we have in cash. There's about 40 odd million of that involved in the trust fund. But that's only earning 0.81%, but I think that's pretty good in today's market. So we're in a very healthy position. Our budget's going strongly and we're on target for our expenditures for our community out there, especially keeping the capital works going and to keep our employment going on the coast here. Very good result, and we continue to track to budget very positively. So I put that to you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Natoli, you wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Isaac, both in the Statement of Income and Expenses, September 20, and the operating result, we have recurrent capital expend that's 121.5% difference to the budget, the current budget to the actuals. Can you just explain? There's no explanatory notes. Just give me some indication of what that is.
Through you, Mr Mayor. So just some accounting term. Recurrent capital expenditure is actually the operational expense on our capital projects. So kind of when an operational expense happens on a capital project, it hits the balance sheet at a different point. So that is what that line refers to. Largely, that's our IT capital program. So that essentially we are ahead on track in terms of the IT program. So yeah, but I'm happy to elaborate on that more in a future form support if you like.
Yes. I think it might get nice just to talk about profiling. It seems to be up for this quarter, but obviously it's on track for the year.
Yeah.
Correct.
That would be great if you could do that in future, just to be able to give us some sort of explanation, so that when you see an item like that, it doesn't just jump out and sort of beg a question and an answer for it. The other part, Mr. CEO, is I would like, if it's possible, when we talk about the overall debt, we keep attributing that to the airport, but I'd actually like to see a complete breakdown of what that debt actually resembles and what it represents, rather than sort of just throw in an anomaly of saying, well, part of that is to do with the airport, but what's the rest of it? And it'd be really good to get that sort of indication. I mean, as being a new councillor, I don't really understand what the makeup of that debt is, apart from I know that there's a large part to do with the airport, but it would be really good to be able to get that and in part of our statements that come to us.
Mr. Mayor, yep, I think we can provide you in relation to that. Definitely there are some large chunks like the airport, and obviously then there's the rest. So we can get a breakdown in relation to the debt, possibly at the end of 3rd of September, and obviously that will give you some insights and as we move into the expungement process.
Councillor Babarowski.
Look, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question on the capital expenditure or the program really behind it. Just like to get some observations or perhaps some intelligence on, and it might not be for Isaac, it might be for perhaps a group executive. Given that we've been very fortunate to get some stimulus funding, has that put some difficulties into the supply chain or the resources in terms of construction teams or people able to deliver these projects into the future? Are we anticipating that we'll have some difficulty delivering the full program, or are we confident that as a region at least we don't anticipate that our capital program or expenditure will be impacted by supply?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, the conversations we're having today are we still retain a high degree of confidence in our capacity to deliver, not just internally but with our market capacity as well. There's certainly a number of good suppliers on the coast that we are working with and building capacity as well.
Thank you, Chris. No further speakers. I'd like to close. Councillor Hungerford.
Just to say it's another excellent result. Congratulate the finance team for their work, and we look forward to the rest of the year rolling out the same. We have another positive year like we did last year.
Thank you. Councillors, we'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. 8.8 is, thank you, Isaac. 8.8 has been dealt with. We'll move to 8.9, which is, pardon me, the Audit Committee meeting from 7th September. The report's been widely distributed, and Bill is here to answer any questions and answer those questions. You happy to move, Councillor Hungerford? Well, you got your light on, that's all. I thought you were nominating. Happy to second, Councillor Natali, thank you. Would you like to open or like to ask questions?
I don't think there's any questions to ask. It's a very healthy report. The main thing there is that there's no financial resourcing issues with the report and no outstanding issues that need to be addressed. Everything that has been identified is in the process of being as completed or already being done. And I'm looking forward to the next report when we get the Queensland Audit Office, then, because I'm very hopeful we're going to get another unmodified audit. That makes 11 or 12 in a row, which is outstanding. So I'm looking forward to that. Otherwise, it's a straightforward report, and I commend this to you.
Thank you, Councillor Hungerford. No further speakers. Councillor Natali.
Just a point. Bill, you might be able to just clarify. We did bring an earlier report to Council about the change over the independent representatives that we have on the Audit Committee. And I know that we've had gone through that process of selecting. And can you just maybe elaborate and bring the councillors to some sort of understanding of what the process will be, because I know that will be a crossover period?
Yep. Through Mr Mayor, and briefly, and just mindful of that such a process is still coming through to the finalisation. But what I can advise the councillors, as we're aware, our two independent members have been on the audit committee for quite a period of time. This council endorsed a process to seek two additional or replacement independent members for our audit committee. We have recently been out to call and have worked our way through the interview process for those independent members. I can advise that we'll be looking to bring a report before the November ordinary meeting of council, which will be seeking your support for the recommendations following that process.
Good. No further speakers. Vote to close, councillor. No need to close. Put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bill. Brings us to item 10.1, which are petitions, and we have one petition from Councillor Landsberg regarding a dog off leash in Little Mountain. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Mr Mayor. I'd just like to lodge this petition of 131 signatures on behalf of the local residents, and I'll just read the passage from their letter to us. There are many residents in our local area and the two retirement villages who are many dog owners, many of them without their own transport. Getting to existing off-leash parks is impossible for them. We, the residents, feel that Wattle Park is large enough to create a dog park without taking away from other community uses. The adjoining footpath is also fraught with danger walking a small dog, since children on bikes frequently ride at great speed on it. Elderly people cannot react fast enough and get out of harm's way, and it is an accident waiting to happen. A designated dog park would be of great benefit to the mental and general health of especially older residents due to their social interaction with like-minded people. We, the undersigned, would like Council in its wisdom to seriously consider our request. I'd just like to lodge this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Landsberg. The receipt of that is moved by Councillor Landsberg, seconded by Councillor Johnston. Those in favour of receipt? That's carried unanimously. Councillors, and I'll be saying this for the first time, so please listen carefully. Councillors, before we move into confidential session, do any of you wish to declare any personal interest in relation to the item that's to be discussed? If this is the case, you will also be required to declare any personal interests when Council resumes resumes the open session to make the decision on these items. Councillors, we have one report on the agenda today that the Chief Executive Officer has recommended be considered in closed session. The recommendation has been made on the basis the information contained in this report is considered to be confidential, as its public disclosure would potentially impact adversely on the finalisation of current commercial negotiations in process and Council's ability to secure the land parcels at a price that represents the best value for ratepayers of the region who contribute to the Environment Levy land acquisition program. Furthermore, the disclosure of the information in this report could impact on Council's approach to conducting commercial negotiations in relation to property acquisitions generally, whether that be acquisitions for the purpose of Environment Levy land acquisition program or acquisitions for other purposes. For these reasons, it has been recommended that Council close the meeting under section 254J (3) G of the Local Government Regulation 2012 to consider the information in this report, as it contains information on negotiations relating to commercial matters involving the local government for which a public discussion would likely to prejudice the interests of local government and therefore our ratepayers. Specifically, the matters are considered confidential in the report, and which would be the subject of discussion when the meeting is closed, relate to the current status of commercial negotiations and potential acquisition price and process for land parcels under consideration. Noting, of course, that Council's decision on this agenda item will be made during open session, which will be viewed by the public. Councillors, can I please have someone move that we close the meeting to discuss item 11.1? Councillor Dixon, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Babarowski, thank you. All those in agreement? That's carried unanimously.
While we close the doors and just make sure the live stream is on. Just give us a second.
Yep. Okay, we're back in open session. Is there someone prepared to move item 11.1, please? Councillor Suarez, thank you. Seconder? Councillor Hungerford, thank you. Do you wish to speak to the motion, Councillor? Reserve the right. Anyone wish to speak? No need to close. We'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Councillors, that brings us to a conclusion of today's meeting, and I'll close the meeting at 11:31. Make the most of the productive afternoon.